We need to get Chris Schilling on the show.
Well, he's a bit of a jerk, but
I know, but so is our enemies.
well, the reason why he's a jerk is not so, well. All right, he's a homophobe, of the rank sort, but he started a gaming company, and then when it failed, he started looking for subsidies from the government.
Do not necessarily represent those of the station or its advertisers, although we think they should. But that's the opinion of America Matters Media.
This is not America. Sha-la-la-la-la. Little piece of you, a little piece in me.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power.
This is not America.
No, it's not. And it didn't take long for the Biden administration to put its stamp on trying to undo everything that Donald Trump had accomplished through executive actions.
Operating at the speed of light.
Ah, yeah.
It's hard to keep up with it all.
Yeah. Well, he said the first thing he did that irked us was he sent troops into Syria while Trump was trying to pull them out. Mm-hmm. So there was a convoy of 40 vehicles and helicopters, we understand, that entered Syria from Iraq to reinforce or resupply the Kurds who guard the oil fields.
That's the ostensible purpose.
Right.
But they're just looking for an excuse to accelerate in there.
Exactly. Assad must go is coming back. There's also a report of a couple of hundred.
And by the way, that worked out really well, didn't it?
Didn't it? As Rand Paul pointed out.
And as the European Union has discovered,
yes.
The refugees.
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Then he immediately moved to cancel over 10,000 union jobs on the Keystone XL pipeline. And
that's
so,
good for the economy.
There's a big divide between energy greens and nature greens that people may not be aware of. They're often at odds with each other, and he definitely said that he's for the energy greens, at least in this case. And then Canada says it will sue.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wisconsin and the unions in that part of the country are also upset.
Go Justin.
Yeah. Then he, there's about 1,000 Hondurans are coming to celebrate his inauguration.
If they can get there.
Yeah. They pushed, did you see the video where they pushed through the police lines in Guatemala? So, and Biden suspended deportations for 100 days, and Texas is immediately suing over that.
And there's about, some of the numbers I've seen, percentages of those are criminals. It's like 70% or something have committed crimes here.
Yeah, and that could very well be true. I want to see a breakdown of what they mean by criminals. If it just means...
Well, they're probably shoplifting and that sort of thing.
Yeah, if you just got a DUI, for example, then that may not be something that you would consider to be a criminal. But they could be. I mean, some of them probably are child molesters. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but there are rumors that in some parts of Mexico, 12-year-olds are fair game. Now, I don't know if that's a slander or not, but that's what I've heard. And so...
well, the best aren't coming up.
They're not sending us their best?
Turns out they're not.
And then Biden ended the Title IX prohibition allowing transgender male to females to compete with women.
I know. Isn't that just everything about this administration so far is disgusting.
I know.
There's a stench about it. It's not just, commonly held dissidents. It's just, it stinks.
Right.
For lack of a better description.
Where is J.K. Rowling when we need her?
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's... how long are women going to put up with, taking away sports from the women for the sake of 2 or 3% of the population?
Well, that's just it. It doesn't affect that many, but it's still horrible. There's just the stigma associated with it. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and women might be able to compete with transgender males in long distance running from the studies I've seen, but anything that requires quick starts and stops, the male leg muscles are just too well developed, and they just,
Not enough equity there?
no, I mean, not enough equity. Exactly. So
This forced effort to make everybody one and the
Right.
same.
and the same.
It's just revolting.
Well, it's against the 14th Amendment. It's
Yeah.
not equality under the law, which is what the country was built on.
But I mean, even apart from that, it just doesn't make common sense, and no one's going to buy into this either.
I know.
The average guy on the street isn't going to buy.
No, they're the one good thing about it is they're definitely starting to overreach already.
But that doesn't. Yeah, but that doesn't matter to them. Because they believe they have a very short window here, a time frame to get all this accomplished, and that's why. What is it? Up to 30 executive orders now
Wow, yeah.
that began this conversation? Up to 30. Hell, he's only been there a week.
And then he increased health care costs,
Yep.
so
Yep.
much for saving people money. He lifted some price controls that Trump had imposed on medications, including insulin. Diabetes is a big deal.
Which is very expensive.
Yes. And then, of course, he's refusing to stop the sham impeachment. He says it must go on. He's reneging on the $2,000 checks to the people because he wants negotiations on means testing. So that'll drag on for...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even with the impeachment, the Democrats could pass that part. They could pass the $2,000 checks, immediately, but they're not going to do it. And that's the progressive left, of course, is pointing that out.
Well, the courts are going to be very busy.
Yes. And then he canceled private prisons. Now, this is not that big a deal.
Yeah, but it's private.
Yeah,
you got to
that's
get
exactly
rid of the
right.
private sector.
Yeah, that's right. It's privatization. That is
Expunge
anathema.
it.
Anathema to the left.
It
And,
is.
There's no worse evidence that private prisons are really worse than public prisons. Public prisons are the problem. And some of them are actually better, like private prisons in Florida have air-conditioned cells, which you don't find in the public prisons. But all right, so then he talks again about equity. He started to say equality, and then he changed it. You see that?
I don't think he knows the difference. I really don't think he knows the difference. I mean, I'm sure he's talking to his people, and they explain it to him, but it goes in one ear and out the other.
Right.
He doesn't know where the bathroom is.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. He probably has a problem with his bowel movements, but he wants to control the climate. That's what we can do.
And some of that came out last week. Did you hear that? Where it's now apparently okay to discuss his difficulties, his cognitive difficulties.
Oh.
In public.
That's approved now?
Yeah, apparently
Okay.
so.
Hi, this is Eddie Floyd. Let me tell you about my favorite non-profit public charity, Wainema Wild Horse Sanctuary, located on the Forsythe Ranch in Hallelujah Junction area. And please go to www.wainemaranch.com. That's WYNEMA ranch.com.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station, the power of radio since 1967.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor, and my co-host, Leland Faegre. So, contrasting the first part of the show, where we talked about all the bad things that Biden has done, we've been seeing a lot of Senator Rand Paul and Congressman Matt Gaetz.
I'm telling you, they're very good, aren't they? I mean, they're very impressive people.
Yeah. So Paul confronted the new Secretary of State during the confirmation hearing, and he really read the
Riot act?
riot act about regime change.
No pun intended, was it?
Right. And then he also voted against his confirmation, which, that takes something. And then,
it should have been done.
Right.
By not just Rand
Not
Paul.
just Rand Paul. And Mike Lee joined him. Mm-hmm. And the other Republicans, though, probably didn't think that Blinken would be tough enough. They vote like Cruz, they voted against him, too. And then he confronted George Step on All of Us.
Yep.
That was really brilliant.
That was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That was in real time on a network news program.
Right.
Commentary program.
And he's not only attacking George personally, but he's attacking left-wing, cancel culture and the way they say that if you don't believe what they're saying, you're a liar.
Well, that was Stephanopoulos' intent, was to set him up.
Right.
And he didn't take the bait.
Right.
So.
Yeah, because they want to obliterate any notion immediately that there was anything wrong with the election. Mm-hmm. No election is perfect, he said, but there are still cases.
Yes, there are.
Yeah, there's a Michigan judge recently granted discovery in a case. I think it only involved one county in Michigan, but there are still ongoing cases. I don't know if there are any at the Supreme Court. I haven't heard of any getting certiorari, but there are still cases working their way up. And then then Gates has been calling out Liz Cheney, and he's one of the ones. He says he's going to go to Wyoming and talk to the Republican Party there. They've already censored her, so they want to make sure she can't run for office again.
Yeah, exactly. But I can't imagine that state re-electing her under the circumstances.
Right.
They've all got a pistol on their hip, Right. They're not going to go for her.
No.
Now that they know who she is.
Right. I mean, they
Cheney's had his way. Her father had his way in that state for many, many years. But I remember there was a reference, there was a video, actually, of Dick Cheney, her father.
Right.
Referencing his membership in the Council on Foreign Relations.
Right.
This goes back several years. And he said, well, I want to kind of keep this quiet because I know my constituents wouldn't like it.
Damn straight.
Yeah.
But so we'll hope to see her out of there. That would be one neocon less that we have to worry about. And so, we have to say that we've really been scoring well on that front, getting the idea of freedom out there and trying to bring some sanity to the process.
Sometimes that's what it takes.
I know. It takes a few people, a few profiles and courage.
Yep.
And then others will follow.
Mm-hmm. Makes it easy for everybody.
Right. And then in other news, Rob Portman announced he will not run for Senate in Ohio. Jim Jordan is...
I was crestfallen.
Yeah. And people are saying that Congressman Jim Jordan, who is part of the Freedom Caucus, outspoken part of the Freedom Caucus, he is expected to run for the seat, but for political purposes he can't announce it yet. But that would be good. We could have another senator. I watch, these people generally vote against the wars in Congress, but they're in a real minority. But in the Senate, if they stick to that, they could make a real difference.
Dominion whistleblower Melissa Carone. Did you ever see how she stood up with Giuliani in some of those hearings there?
Right.
She's announced her intention to run for, it's the 46th district in Michigan. She hopes to replace conservative state representative John Riley, who defeated his Democratic opponent on November 3rd with 62% of the vote. That's a good margin. Riley is a conservative who is unable to run for office again because of term limits there. So, there are all kinds of potential opportunities here if we recognize them and really support these people. And they deserve to be supported, just like we did when we ran for office.
Yes.
That's why I got 17% of the vote.
Yeah, wow. So, I got 25 once.
Did you really?
Yeah.
You show off.
I ran against a Democrat with no Republican, I think it was.
Yeah, it's always
versa.
because there's no Republican in the district.
Exactly.
That's how I got 17%.
So it's better than none of the above.
But what it says is more important, and that is that I should have gotten every single Republican in that district because there wasn't a Republican on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
But in the aftermath, we can see where the Republicans didn't vote.
Right.
And they had a Democrat and they had me. Why didn't I get all of the Republican vote?
I don't know, man.
By definition, I'm a Republican. I'm a
Right.
small R Republican.
Right.
I should have had every single one of those votes. And by the way, Jennifer, when she ran here a few years ago, she had an extraordinary percentage of the total popular vote as well.
We're talking about Jennifer Terhune. Yeah,
Yep.
She's been active and she's run for office. And so this thing is not settled by any means, and but we've got a big fight on our hand for the next 2 years. And then this may be controversial, but since they're going to be playing this affirmative action on us card, the race card, so we should talking truth to power should also be involved in figuring out what racial equity means.
We should be so lucky.
So I'm not a white supremacist. I'm basically a Caucasian preservationist. It's obvious that Caucasians are the target of organized enmity, and so we need to be put on the endangered species list. I'm just doing my bit for the planet.
Yeah, that's right.
So most Caucasian peoples are not supremacists, but are the most egalitarian and inclusive peoples on the earth. That does not make Caucasian people superior, but does make them unique. And the destruction.
So it's still okay to be white then?
I think so.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
The destruction of our Jacksonian heritage by these egalitarian Puritans in the Democratic Party means the obliteration of Caucasian culture by the mob of non-Caucasian peoples. They're taking Chaucer off the curriculum in England.
Yeah?
Canterbury Tales.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just goes on.
Because he
and
was
on
a
and on.
colonizer.
Yeah.
You know that? I wonder how many blacks, or they would have called them Moors back in those days.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had a country at all if it wasn't for colonization.
Yeah, first the Danes colonized them, right?
I mean,
And the Vikings, and then there were others before them. Before the Anglo-Saxons, there were the older English people. So it just goes on and on. But people have got to stand up and defend our heritage in the next 4 years, because we're going to be dragged through the mud. And
well, they're following an Orwellian script. There's no question about that.
right.
And it sounds like our enemies have read the book because they're implementing it verse by verse.
I haven't heard that Biden has reinstated critical race theory yet. Maybe he overlooked that.
He'll probably leave that to the states,
Well, it's in the federal government.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
California has already decided they're going to implement it in their curricula.
Right.
So
Right. But, I mean, as far as government, federal offices, like federal
federal level?
agencies,
Yeah.
where they go through this training, which is to shame and humiliate them. So, and you got to remember the Caucasian race is only 11% of the world's population. And so we do have a claim to being needing to be put on some kind of endangered species list or something. So out of the Biden cabinet, we've got a couple of minutes here. We have 21 out of the 21 positions. We have 7 are Caucasian Catholics, which is 33%. Boy, Biden is bringing the Irish mafia into.
yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Only Catholics need apply.
Yeah. 6 are Jewish, 28%. 4 are Hispanic, 19%. 3 are black, 14%. And 2 are Asian, about 9.5%. There is no white with a Protestant ethnic background. No WASPs allowed in the Biden cabinet. Although John Kerry is kind of a mixed bag. I found out his father was a converso, which is It means a Jewish convert to Christianity, in this case Catholicism. His mother, though, it was a WASP, Episcopalian, but he was raised Catholic, so we don't know where he fits in.
I'll tell you where he fits in. He's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations.
That's a pretty bad place to fit in.
He fits in real well there.
Yeah. So, and in Congress, we now have 25 members of the House and 9 in the Senate who are Jewish. That is 6%, or 3 times the national average. And I've got a little quote from Israel Shamir. He's a non-Zionist Jew. You can find his writings on the UNS Review webpage.
Oh, this is a doozy. I saw this quote.
Yeah. The Jews are good when allied with the oppressed, while at the top, they oppress more vigorously than anybody. Ask the Palestinians. Mm-hmm. That's what Israel said. And Israel lives in Palestine, by the way. So,
does he?
Yeah. So we have a lot of... we're going to have a lot of conflict. There's even more. We don't have time for it in this segment. But did you know that melanin endows blacks with superior mental, physical, and spiritual abilities?
I've been hearing this lately. I was always frustrated that I didn't produce enough melanin.
We'll be back after the break.
At Northern Nevada Family Dental, we are proud to announce a wide range of advanced dental services by way of...
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Talk the Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor. My co-host is Leland Faegre. So we're talking about how we're going to all be hearing a lot about race and equity and all these things, and affirmative action is going to be back in full force.
They've turned us into a racist society.
I know. The more you bear down on these things, the worse off you're going to be.
What happened to the content of our character?
I know. Well, my MLK is old hat, I guess,
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, I think he's passé now.
Huh.
You have to go beyond that and get into critical race theory and all this. But when Biden's nominee to head the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, Kristen Clark, who is black, a black lady, when she was an undergraduate at Harvard, she wrote a letter. That was in the 90s. The book The Bell Curve had just come out, written by Charles Murray and another social scientist. And basically, they didn't invent the idea, but they popularized, put it out there for people to read, the IQ studies that said that, a Darwinian explanation of how we get here could indicate that there could be differences in IQ between the races. And nobody wants to admit that because race is just a social construct. And that is a part of the Jewish intellectual movement of the 20th century called Bozian sociology as opposed to Darwinian sociology. But at any rate, you don't want to get into the weeds there. But
we don't? That's what we do here.
Yeah, I know. We do get into the weeds a lot. So
that'd be the first time we didn't get in the weeds.
So she wrote that the core of the human brain is the locus coeruleus, which is a structure that is actually black because it contains large amounts of neuromelanin, which is essential for its operation. And then she asserted that black infants sit, stand, and crawl and walk sooner than white infants. And then she said that human mental processes are controlled by melanin, that same chemical that gives blacks their superior physical and mental and spiritual abilities. And do you ever listen to an atheist ask somebody to define spiritual?
It's kind of like that. Is that what you're saying?
Everybody talks about spiritual. Nobody
Yeah.
can define it. But
Exactly.
anyway, some scientists have revealed that most whites are unable to produce melanin because their pineal glands are often calcified or non-functioning. And they claim that pineal calcification rates with Africans are 5 to 15%, and Europeans are 60 to 80%. This is the basis between the differences between blacks and whites.
I just can't even believe we're having this discussion.
I know.
Even here.
I know.
Even on this show.
Melanin endows blacks with greater mental, physical, and spiritual abilities, something which cannot be measured based on Eurocentric standards. Yeah, so, and then she even got into trouble with the Jews, and like we pointed out that the blacks and
They
the
get
Jews
along
are
pretty well.
They get along pretty well, except when they don't.
Right.
So she invited a Professor Tony Martin to speak at Harvard, and Martin wrote a book called The Jewish Onslaught, which denounces the Jewish tradition and Jewish people for making up the idea of African inferiority. And he said that the sages of the Babylonian Talmud were the earliest racists of recorded history. And there's some truth to that. Moses Maimonides, who compiled the Talmud into its basically its present form back in the 13th century, he did write some racist tracts. So, but his picture is in the halls of Congress, Moses Maimonides. You can see his picture there.
There's nothing illegal about it.
No.
I mean, what are you going to do? Go ask him about it?
Yeah,
Knock on his door? Honestly.
right.
It's just...
So, that's not going to exactly make the Jews and the blacks get along together, but...
except when they need to.
Except when they need to. Except when they... Like I said, the Jews are very nice when they're helping the oppressed, although Professor McDonald would point out that the reason why so many Jewish people in America are liberals is because it's a way of getting at the whites. It's a way of getting at white Christians. Mm-hmm. If the more you align yourself with racial minorities, the weaker the Christian majority is going to be, and the Jews have a real fear and hatred of Christians, So anyway...
They want us dead.
Yeah. Well, they do, but they can't do it because they're in the minority. Yeah.
But
So black game show host Nick Cannon was fired for last summer for espousing the melanin equals superior line, and he had identified melanin with soul. And that, blacks have soul. So soul music. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And white folks living in the Caucasus didn't get enough sun, so they became evil. And they were compelled to rape, steal, and kill. So whites are closer to animals than blacks.
I've always thought that.
I know. So, and Biden is going out of his way to fortify this. Remember when he said, why don't they teach history in the schools? It was a black man that invented the light bulb, not a white guy named Edison.
He wants to go he likes to go with science.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, Edison did have a black assistant who may have contributed quite a bit to discovering the light bulb. You'd have to read, more in depth about it.
You'd have to be there.
Yeah, but the fact is that, Edison is given credit for it. So we're going to see 4 more years of, constant racist ideology, which is supposed to make us a non-racist country. I know.
How does that happen?
Yep, it's not the content of our character anymore.
I've been watching a lot of Westerns lately.
Have you?
Yeah, I switched over. It's the only thing I can watch, I can tolerate is...
What kind of Westerns do you like?
Well, I like Gunsmoke.
Gunsmoke.
The Rifleman.
The Rifleman,
some of that stuff is very, very good,
Yeah. I mean, Gunsmoke, Matt Dillon was kind of a good sheriff. I mean, he didn't always put people in jail. He didn't overassert his authority, you know. Mm-hmm. And he was always helping Kitty, who owned the saloon, So we know what Kitty actually probably was, like a madam, or if not more. But so he was a pretty good guy, and The Rifleman was also a very good family show. I remember growing up to The Rifleman. I was young at that age.
Yep.
And
good family content.
Right. I also liked the first adult Western, though, Paladin.
Oh, I didn't see that, but I heard of it.
Yeah, you can get it. There's a Paladin channel on YouTube. You can watch some of the old. He was a wealthy guy that lived in San Francisco, and his gun was for hire, but he was always just, and he always obeyed the law. But it was still. I enjoyed that show.
Well, you could sit down with your children and watch it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I mean, those days are kind of gone.
This is not America.
Nope, it's not America anymore. So we need to get into a little foreign policy now in the last couple of segments of the show. And the first one should probably mention is that the European Union no longer recognizes Juan Random Guido, we call him Random Guido or Random Guy, as the president of Venezuela. In fact, he's no longer in the National Assembly. So he's not even a politician. He's a private citizen.
I wonder where he is, actually.
Yeah. People are saying, why wasn't he arrested? And Chavez, that terrible, brutal dictator, says, we don't have to worry that much about him. We can, he's free, unless he does something wrong.
Well, I think the CFR had something to say about that. That was their baby there. They thought they could work him in, and it just didn't happen. Didn't pull it off.
So the European Union is folded, but not Tony Blinken.
Yep.
Anthony Blinken, in his confirmation hearing, says that Random Guido is still our guy. He's the true president of Venezuela. And,
the more things change,
the
more they remain the same.
Right. Le plus ça change, le plus ça même. Le plus ça même. Yep. So what can you say? We're going back to the Cold War, or maybe the Hot Wars. We're going back to
the interventionist state.
Yeah, the interventionist state in every aspect of our lives. Not just.
I mean, it took them how many hours to make the invasion into Syria?
Yeah,
I know. They had that planned in advance.
Oh yeah. They must have been thinking about these things at least for a few days.
Choreographed.
Yeah, choreographed is right. So, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about more foreign policy. We have news about Russia with Alexei Navalny, and also about Iran.
The Fed has decided to leave short-term rates right where they are. So nothing's changed there. I don't think that surprises anybody.
No.
Yeah, they have to maintain economic stimulus in order to keep food on our tables at this point.
Yep.
So that isn't going to be a shock to anybody. But Jerome Powell is enjoying a presser as we speak. So I would have liked to have heard that. Not that there's anything particularly exciting about what he's going to have to say, but it's just the investor in me.
He talks a little clearer than Alan Greenspan.
Yeah.
Driving force and truck and auto repair. Everybody knows.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor. My co-host is Leland Faegre, and we're talking a little foreign policy, as is our wont at times here, talking truth to power. So there is a lot of speculation that Biden's team will want to re-enter the joint, the JCPOA, which is the Iran deal on nuclear weapons. And if anybody thinks that after all these sanctions that have been imposed on Iran is going to come back hat in hand, apparently that's not the truth. Iran is a very proud nation with 4,000-year-old heritage, and so they're saying that...
well, the oligarchy's eating.
Yeah.
They've got health care.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, that's true. The leaders of Iran are sanctions don't work on the leadership. No. They only work on the average people. Mm-hmm. So Iran will not accept new restrictions on its ballistic missiles. And ballistic missiles does not mean nuclear ability. It just means, ability to send a missile straight up in the air and have it come down on a target. So, or its alliances with Syria or Iraq or Gaza or anyone else as part of restoring the deal. And Iran will not accept a partial suspension of U.S. sanctions to enter the deal. All sanctions must be ended before Iran will re-enter the deal, because all the sanctions were suspended in the original deal. And then Iran will not endorse the two-state solution for Israel as a requirement. Now, a lot of people say that Ahmadinejad and Iran want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, but the number of people in our State Department who speak Farsi must be kind of scarce. Because
Ahmadinejad, is he still around?
He's I've seen him being interviewed. I mean, he's not in power. But,
right.
Yeah, but... So what Iran has always wanted is a referendum in the region to decide the Palestinian issue. And you know where that referendum is going to land, because even with the Abraham Accords, 80-90% of the population in the Arab Gulf states that signed on to the Abrahamic Accords oppose anything to do with Israel until this Palestinian question is settled. But they're trying to develop commerce in the region. There's going to be new railroad lines going all around Saudi Arabia, and so they're going to try and get back in good standing with Qatar. And so it's basically these accords are basically about commerce, economic
initiatives.
Yeah, but which is not bad. I'm not opposed to economic initiatives.
We don't fight for against countries that share our commerce.
Yeah, exactly. So Iran wants a general. If you're talking about arms control, if you want regional arms control, Iran wants a general framework for negotiated arms control in the Gulf region that would require Israel to declare its nuclear arsenal.
Mm-hmm. That'll happen.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Jesus will come back first.
So that's the state of the Iran deal, and we're going to see if Mr. Blinken is...
well, I don't see how they can do it. I don't think they can overturn what Trump has established there. It's going to be very difficult for them to begin to initiate new change or new processes there, I think.
Right.
After what has happened.
Yep.
How do you at least empirically it appears as though things were fairly stable. Mm-hmm. So why disrupt that? How can they get away with that, I guess is my question. The current administration.
What do you mean things are stable there?
Well, we have now the Abrahamic Accords all over the region. There were no initiatives that started wars in the area.
Right.
How are they going to build on that? How does the administration build on that? Except by giving Trump credit, which they don't want to do.
I'm not sure what you mean by build on that. I mean, the idea is to get
They have to show, I guess what I'm saying is they have to have a foreign policy directive there. As their own brand, What are they going to do? How can they fix what Trump has already established there?
Well, they could open up, agreements to bring Iran back into the deal, so they're no longer being sanctioned.
Then they would have to reverse what has been done.
In what sense would they have to reverse? I mean, they wouldn't.
The sanctions they would have to reverse the sanctions.
Yeah, the sanctions would have to be reversed.
Yeah,
that's the main thing.
But that would change everything. I think that would change the dynamic and upset the establishment base for what they've accomplished. Because it was Pompeo. It was Pompeo during the Trump years,
right?
And he represented the establishment.
Right.
He may not be a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, but he's got his imprimatur on what happened over the last 4 years in the region.
Well, the European Union would go along with it.
Sure, they would.
Yeah, and so it could sort of weaken Iran's new relationship with Russia and China if in fact they didn't need their help to evade the sanctions. But it's not going to be easy because Iran and Venezuela are closer together now. There's Iranian supermarkets.
Are there really
in Venezuela?
In Venezuela?
Yeah, yeah, and so they're supplying Venezuela with food because Venezuela is mostly hilly jungle except for the oil fields and so on. So it's they don't grow their own food. They've always had to import food. So Iran is helping them that way by bringing food in.
Yeah, I just don't see how they're going to pull off a foreign policy that's uniquely a brand that belongs to Biden. Not that it would ever belong to him because he doesn't know where the bathroom is, but I mean, that has his
Well, it would have to be good for the Jews, first of all.
Right.
And that's an obstacle right there. And then it would have to, the Republican neocons are not going to like it. Anti-Israel people like Ted Cruz, they're not going to go for it. So it would be difficult. But again, it doesn't. If it's just restoring the agreement, it doesn't necessarily have to be a treaty that goes to the Senate.
No.
Yeah. So.
Well, the previous treaty wasn't really a treaty.
Right. It wasn't.
It was an executive action.
Yeah. They probably knew they couldn't get it through the Senate, and
yeah, exactly.
Which would have made it much harder for us to pull out of.
Right.
So.
And it took a lot of money to pull that damn thing off too, right?
Yeah.
What was the amount of money that Iranian?
Well,
deal?
yeah, but don't forget that was money that
was in escrow.
Yeah, that was back from the Shah's days.
Right.
That the Shah made a down payment on some military equipment, airplanes and such, and that they weren't delivered. So it was sitting there in escrow, and they delivered it. And the only reason why they put it in cash on pallets, which the Republicans make a big deal about, is because we kicked Iran out of the banking system.
They flew it over there.
Yeah, kicked Iran out of the banking system, so we couldn't do it. But the Democratic liberals are more favorable to Muslims than the Trump administration.
They've given lip service to it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, well, we'll see. Well, we've only got a couple of minutes. I wanted to talk about Alexei Navalny a bit. He returned to Russia and was promptly arrested, and everybody is upset about it. But in fact, he wasn't arrested for what he did in Minsk, except for he violated probation. A lot of people don't know that he was on probation for fraud. He defrauded a French cosmetic company out of $400,000. So that's why he was arrested when he came back.
I think he's ours. I think he's one of us.
Oh yeah, I think he is.
He's there now to run cover for Biden's.
Right, he's a CIA asset, if nothing else.
Totally.
And so there were some demonstrations which got a lot of press, but he has. He normally can pull about 4,000 people for a demonstration. Don't forget, Moscow's got 11 million people.
That's more than Biden.
Yeah, that's more than shows up for Biden.
Biden would be jealous of that.
Yeah, but it's about the same as show up in Russia for a rock star. So it's
right.
So it's not that significant. And we saw, some of the Russian police coming down on the demonstrators, but my sources said there was only a few demonstrators that got out of hand. I guess you know, they must have been listening. They must be QAnon or something, and they
or their version of it.
Yeah, their version of QAnon. But there is some concern because in eastern Russia there was more demonstrations, and eastern Russia was demonstrating earlier this year, but it wasn't about Putin. It was about Zinoviev, people in Zinoviev's party. There are three major parties in Russia. Four, I think, but three major bigger ones. And one of them is kind of more to the right than Putin is. And there was some corruption in Vladivostok, in you know, the city on the Pacific Ocean, regarding people in Zinoviev's party that they were demonstrating against. So, and there's also intimation that this was stirred up by social media.
Oh, wouldn't be surprised a bit.
No.
Yeah.
So the big tech guys had their finger in the demonstration, or getting the demonstration.
Well, we would like to thank Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, yeah, always.
Calling out Adam Schiff and John Brennan as more dangerous than the mob at the Capitol.
Yes.
Way to go, Tulsi.
Yes, as usual.
She has no home in that party. Don't you think she's gone?
I don't think she can stay a
How could she
Democrat.
possibly stay there? They'll get rid of her before, you know.
You're right.
She might leave of her own, might not leave of her own volition, but I mean, I don't see how the Democrats can keep her in.
She's got to be either independent or green or libertarian, or Republican. She could join the Republican
Yeah,
Party.
I think that's probably what she's going to end up doing.
Yeah.
It just seems like it.